My name is Jill Phillips, and I'm the creator of Whose Shoes, a popular approach to co-production. I was named as an HSJ 100 wildcard and want to help give a voice to others, talking about their ideas and experiences. I'll be chatting with people from all sorts of different perspectives, walking in their shoes. If you are interested in the future of healthcare and like to hear what other people think, or perhaps even contribute at some point, Whose Shoes Wildcard is for you. In the last podcast, I spoke to Rachel Tomlinson, a head teacher, talking about the kind and inclusive approach that she uses at her primary school in Lancashire. Already it's proving to be one of the most popular episodes. I met Rachel through Yvonne Newbold. Rachel was a speaker at the Newbold Hope conference. Well, today I have the privilege of talking to one of the parents who also spoke at this amazing event. Janina Vigurs spoke from the heart about her experience of parenthood and what she's learnt through this supportive community brought together by Yvonne Newbold. As I chatted to Janina and got to know her a little better, I found that we both share a love of storytelling and much more. I thought she would make an amazing podcast guest. So let's find out more. Welcome, Janina. Thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and what's important to you?
Hello, Jill. Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's a massive honour, considering everyone else that you've had on. To be amongst all of those names is really humbling. Thank you. So, my name is Janina Vigurs. I'm a professional storyteller, playmaker, and general mucker abouter. So I work with children and young people primarily between the ages of about 3 and 11 years old. Although if we are being truthful, I believe there's a child within every single adult. It just gets hidden under layers and layers of routine and responsibility. And so I speak to the child within grown-ups too. I work with children and young people in schools and across educational settings, but I also run birthday parties and I perform at corporate events and I perform at festivals as well, like Cambridge Folk Festival and Glastonbury. I'm one of the Glastonbury storytellers in the kids field. The things that are important to me are inclusion. I believe that everybody, no matter who you are, where you've come from, everybody deserves the right to play, and everyone deserves the right to be heard and has a deep need to be included and to feel welcome at the table of play. And I include storytelling within play and not the other way around, because the way that I do my storytelling, the way that I work, it's very playful, it's very inclusive. It's not a spectator sport. It's very active and not passive at all.
That's an incredible start, because in terms of Whose Shoes and storytelling, obviously the big part of my work is around people telling their lived experience stories, serious stories, but we use play and we use fun and we use playfulness like throughout our work. And I don't know whether you've seen the lemons on Twitter.
I have.
And people say, what are the lemons? You know, why lemons? Where do they come from? And probably it's more interesting to have them as a bit of intrigue rather than the exact where the lemons came from. So I started with Whose Shoes back in 2008, and it was a board game. It looked like a board game. It's a tool. It's a facilitation tool. It's a co-production tool, but it is, like it or not, a game with little shoes and a dice. And then in 2009, along came the recession, and literally people were saying to me, oh, well, you'll get nowhere if you call it a board game. You need to call it a learning development facilitation tool with lots and lots of management speak. And I never went there. And I've done Stellar stories. I don't know if you've come across any of my Stellar stories. And using fun, we've got the fundamentals of building a change platform with lemons. And it literally starts with children have fun. Why is it that we can't have fun as adults? What is it that knocks that out of people? So we are so on the same page, Janina.
Oh, fantastic. Do you know, and that's been one of my most recent thoughts, is how can I help grown-ups include play more in their lives, in their day-to-day? lives just in the mundanity of it all, because you're never going to make time for something as silly and frivolous as play, because there's no value in it. It doesn't make any money. It doesn't get your house cleaner any quicker. It doesn't get the Ocado order done any quicker. But it's so vital for our well-being that I honestly, genuinely believe that there needs to be space for play within adults' lives more. And I think the people that actively work to include that live more fulfilled and happier lives.
And I think at our workshop, I see some people perhaps didn't realise it was a board game, and you can see a mixed reaction sometimes. And then, I mean, I know the very first session I did, and there was a really senior guy, and he started arguing about whether he got an extra turn if he threw a 6. And you know, I saw him from literally leaning back in his chair with a suit thinking, you know, I'm going to be out of my comfort zone here, to properly being in and chatting and being a character. And you just find things within people that need to be found, don't you? And then they talk to each other as equals, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's a real leveler. It absolutely is. And it's interesting that, and I get this a lot in schools as well, sometimes children and indeed adults almost need permission to join in, and permission to play, permission to be a little bit loud or a little bit cheeky or a little bit raucous. And when that permission's given and they kind of take it, it's nothing short of beautiful.
Yeah. And I think, as with my work, if you're trying to do something serious alongside it, so games in adult learning or co-production or whatever, then when they come and they play together, and then you create that atmosphere of being equals and actually we're all just people together, then it's a bit of magic. I think you've said that you unlock something, and then that's where the real conversations come, because people trust each other and feel at ease together. In some of the workshops and work that we've done around really sensitive topics, and to be honest, Janina, you know, you do something for the first time and I've thought, is this appropriate? You know, ultimately it's a board game and a really, really not just serious but sensitive topic. And it just gives me so much joy when I hear laughter in that room, because those people with difficulties or whatever it might be, we're all human beings together, and the lightness that comes from laughing together. And you mentioned something really exciting as we were starting. That word laughter reminded me. So what's going on for you?
So I've been approached by a charity, wonderful charity called the Laughter Specialists. And they are a team of clowns, play specialists who do an awful lot of work in hospitals and healthcare settings. And they work to spread joy and laughter and silliness and fun amongst children who are in awful situations that we as adults would never want or dream to be in. And for children, when they are receiving medical treatment, play is often way down the agenda. Obviously, their health has got to come first. But if children are playing and happy and finding small pockets of joy where they can, then I believe, and the charity believes, that their health will be improved because they'll feel better in themselves. And so the laughter specialists have approached me, and we're having chats about how I can be involved with them and how I can help them spread the laughter bug. And I'm really excited about it.
I'm sure you'll be amazing. I'm sure that will happen. And obviously the terrible, terrible things happening in Ukraine. I don't know whether you saw the clowns at the station. So exactly what you're saying, you know, these families, and the mum can't imagine it, with one bag packed for the family and on her own, and perhaps with a couple of children with her, and they come across a clown, and the children and the mum are laughing. You know, for that moment, everything else is forgotten, because laughter is just so deep, isn't it? And so good for you.
Oh, beautiful.
Just incredible to see. So there's some nice video clips that I've seen.
Oh.
Coincidentally, tonight, actually, I love the way threads are being woven, if you like, through the podcast series. So talking to Rachel Tomlinson last week, I mentioned Bob Claber and his kindness sessions. There's one tonight, so by the time this podcast goes out, it will sadly have past, but not for you, Janina, if you're interested. They've got a laughter specialist talking tonight as their main speaker. I don't know any more about that. I've just seen it. I love Bob's sessions, and I've seen 6:00 tonight, so I could send you the link to that.
Yes, please. Yes, please. I will be there. Oh, fabulous.
And I think you'd love that whole community, and that's why I mentioned it with Rachel. Just as Rachel in her school is using kindness to reach the children and the adults, these kindness sessions, they're international sessions. They're pulling in the most amazing group of people who've got that in common, that they actually think that kindness in healthcare or in life or whatever it is the way forward.
That's so wonderful. And I love your analogy about threads being woven, because I think we've got enough weavings here on our warp and weft to make a coat. Because something I don't think I've mentioned to you before is that a little personal side project that I started when I was a new mummy is a little project I call Relentless Kindness. And it's where I have lots of tiny little 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch cards, and it has relentless kindness on one side, and on the other side I handwrite just motivational stuff and just encouraging quotes, and I leave them in places for people who I will never meet to find,
Right.
in really ordinary places, like amongst the value beans in a supermarket, or in a car park pay station point. And I've been doing that on and off for about 7 years now.
Really?
And, yeah, and it's just a wonderful thing that's brought a lot of joy to my life. And yeah, and we've got a lovely little Facebook community around that as well, about 300 people now. It's lovely.
So local to me, I'm big fans of, and I'm not sure if they've had a mention yet on the podcast series. They certainly deserve to. So Grapevine Coventry, and I don't know quite what they're doing at the moment. I'm a little bit out of touch. Some of these things obviously haven't happened in the same way the last couple of years, but I've walked around the park in Coventry with them as a group, and we've had little like random acts of kindness and little cards to give to people, and some of the children giving, not just the children and the adults, and you see people react, and there might be this is a bit weird initial reaction because you're actually going up and giving, and then they see what it is, and it's been like a little lavender sprig with a nice butterfly painted on it, or just little things like crafty things that someone's obviously gone to a little bit of time and effort to make for them. And you see people smile and then perhaps have a little conversation, and perhaps it just lightens everybody's day, and it's just lovely.
Oh, that's so sweet. And also there's science behind it. It's not just a lovely, woolly, slightly hippie thing to do. The acts of being mindfully kind to people obviously benefit the person that you're being kind to, whether you can see them or you know them or not. But also it does something good in you as well. I don't know what brain hormones it releases, what chemicals it releases, but I'm fairly certain that dopamine is released, which is a pleasure-seeking hormone or brain chemical. And doing kind and good things makes you feel good too. So it's backed by science, man. It's not just happiness.
And to see little children doing that, to learn to actually have the pleasure of giving as well as receiving, for all of us, just like you're saying, there's more pleasure really, I think, in like giving a present and finding something that will just be spot on with that person, a little thing, a nonsense thing, it's good fun. So I've realised that you're the second children's storyteller on the podcast series. So I don't know if you came across, it was an early episode, Rachel Wong. So she's a friend of mine, and she wrote children's stories with the children during the pandemic. So incredible story that she wrote with the children in Middlesbrough, and she was getting the children to write the next chapter. So one day she was talking to them, and then the next day she'd be basically writing up what they told her to write. So if you haven't come across that episode, you'll love that one.
I will find it out. I am shocked and amazed that I do not know who Rachel Wong is. And I'm sorry, Rachel, if you're listening. The writing world, the children's storytelling writing world, and the children's storytelling telling world are often two quite separate things, and we don't tend to mix or meet often, which is a sad thing, I think. But when people say to me, what do you do? And I say, I'm a storyteller, I think there's a little confusion as to what that actually is and what it looks like. So I tell folk and fairy tales from my culture, which is British, but also East European as well. That's where the Janina part comes in. So I'm part Polish. And I tell them from memory. So there are no books, there are no props, there are no puppets, there's nothing. It's just me. And I think sometimes when I do turn up at schools or at corporate events, people are sometimes a little bit confused or disappointed, maybe, but they're certainly not by the end, because I work to tell a story with the children. I don't expect them to sit quietly and still and just listen to me rabbiting on and on and on and on and on. No, there are several ways in which I get them involved, and I encourage them to help me tell the story. And I tell a story with them, they tell a story with me, and together the story gets told. And I love that, because it means that I can have the same story that I might tell, I don't know, the magic porridge pot. I might tell that 5 days in a row in 5 different settings. And each time that story will be different. It won't be exactly the same every time, because there is that element of spontaneity that Rachel was obviously drawing out of the children with her work as well. And that's magical. And at the end of our sessions, at the end of our time together, I say, well, thank you so much. I always thank them. And I say, this is the story that I've told you, and that's the story that you can now tell someone else. Please take it. It's yours. This is my gift to you. Take it, run with it, go and give it to somebody else. And I encourage them to become storytellers too.
I absolutely love it. Now, you must promise me, and if necessary, I could link you up. I'm so excited. I'm imagining this conversation between you and Rachel Wong, because you're so in tune with each other with that. And separately from that, Rachel's messaged me and told me about an event. I think it's on for the whole of April in Birmingham, and I'm hoping to go tomorrow. And it's Ukrainian storytellers. And incredible. I think some people that she knows in Birmingham, and helping them tell the story of their families in Ukraine at the moment.
Wow.
And through an art exhibition, photos, stories, and so on. I should know more about it, but I don't know more about it because I haven't been yet.
Yeah.
But in the power of storytelling, I think it's given people, some students that came over, as I understand, and obviously separated from their families, desperately worried about what's happening at home. It's given people purpose to try and share some of that.
It's really important, and it is really, really powerful medicine whenever you go through something just really enormously life-changing. You see it a lot in new mums, new mothers, desperate to, they will tell their birth story. If they know that you're pregnant, they will tell you their birth story, even if you don't want to hear it. There's just that need to be heard. And what Rachel's involved with, I think, is just phenomenal. I've been lucky enough to be involved with an international group of storytellers called the World Storytelling Cafe online. Started at the beginning of the first lockdown. We came together, and storytellers are very well-connected people. Obviously, we're peoply people. And so we collect other storytellers as we go along. We make good alliances and good friendships. So my good friend, John Rowe, who is a master storyteller and my mentor, helped set this up with the World Storytelling Cafe, which is an actual place in Morocco, because Moroccan storytelling is a very rich culture. And yeah, so we gathered lots of storytellers from absolutely all across the globe, and we come together. We're still doing it weekly over various sessions online through the World Storytelling Cafe website. And yeah, it's operated via Zoom, so you can hop in and come and join us live. And there is a digital hat where you can, if listeners feel so desired to, they can drop some digital notes and coins in the digital hat, and that gets shared out throughout the tellers that are telling on that particular day. But yeah, we did have a Ukrainian special where we managed to get hold of some Ukrainian tellers to share their stories as well, their folk and fairy tales, and that was just wonderful.
Incredible. Really incredible. So now I want to go off and join the World Storytelling Cafe because it just sounds really good fun. And similarly, Bob Claber's sessions, the kindness sessions I mentioned, a proper international audience, and people getting up in obviously Australia and New Zealand at 3-4 in the morning to join these sessions, because People are just so keen to come together and share.
They are, yeah. The power of hearing a good story well told is wonderful. It's what I love. I'm a big radio listener. I'm a big radio fan. I listen to Radio 4 a lot. And if somebody is telling something or talking on a subject matter with knowledge and passion, it's absolutely fascinating. I listened to a 30-minute documentary a couple of years ago about dust on Radio 4. It was brilliant, absolutely fantastic, because it was told well and told with passion and told with knowledge. And like you said, if something is told with lightness and first-hand experience and from the heart, it's an incredibly powerful learning tool. And so just trying to bring this full circle before I go off on another tangent again, like I'm prone to doing.
We're dangerous together.
Oh, yeah. I know a previous podcast guest of yours who's put together the library of stories for NHS clinicians to access. I think is just a brilliant, brilliant, wonderful resource. And I think that the learning that could come from that will far exceed anything that you could learn on a formally qualified education course.
Oh, yes. Miles Sibley and the work he's doing around patient experience library. I think that's who you mean.
Yeah, that's the one.
And honestly, I'm just hoping that that podcast can be so influential, because just like you're saying, it's research based, that storytelling is not just important and a good thing and enjoyable. He's using evidence and research to try and get patient stories, and even that word patient stories, up to the same level of acceptance and recognition and importance as medical stories, or actually they're called medical reports. And the whole mismatch of language in terms of, as a clinician, I report a serious incident or I write a medical report, but you come up with a complaint or a patient story or something a bit anecdotal. And I just found talking to Miles blew me away, really. Just so fascinating that he not only has collected, I think it's 70,000 documents in his library, but
Wow.
could just talk with such knowledge about how important they are. And things like, if an organisation that's collected patient stories or patient information closes, the lack of priority to actually hang on to all of that information as evidence, and how that feeds into these sadly regular tragedies that are happening in the NHS because what? Because people aren't listening, because they're not being heard telling their experiences. Wow.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly, absolutely. And the unbalancedness of the weight of value that's put on those experiences. Using different types of languages is you're absolutely right. A report, I feel, is seen as way more serious and important than a patient experience.
Yeah.
So language is vital.
And that's been a theme that runs through, I mean, not just the podcast series, but everything I do, really, that language and getting people to understand the power of words and using that word rather than a different word. It's not just semantics, it's important. So in terms of your own journey, if you like, because that's how we've connected and come together, what is there that you'd like to tell the listeners about that?
Yeah, so another hat that I wear, and in fact the most important and wonderful and flamboyant hat that I wear, is that I'm a mummy. I'm a mummy to a brilliant 8-year-old girl who in December 2020 was diagnosed as autistic. And when I tell people that, I generally get the sorry face, the pitiful, oh, I'm sorry about that face. But actually the diagnosis was a brilliant thing for us, because it gave us access. It gave us the key to the right toolbox so that we could open that toolbox and use those tools inside to support her. And a wonderful toolbox that doesn't actually need a key at all is one that's provided by Newbold Hope. And throughout lockdown, our experience of our daughter's behaviour was pretty brutal and quite ugly at times. And we experienced, obviously, lockdown was hard for a lot of people, But when you're 8 and you're told that you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't see this person and you can't see that person that you love either, and then you're autistic as well, but you don't realise you're autistic because you haven't got a diagnosis yet, and your parents don't realise what's going on with you entirely. It's it's a cocktail for explosive behaviour on her side and on ours as well. So it was a really tough time, and I turned to Facebook to distract myself, but in the distraction I managed to somehow find Newbold Hope, who offered me a lifeline, really, and offered me answers and ways of approaching her and the behaviour that she was displaying. And it offered me a translation phrase book. You know, when you go on holiday and you pick up a phrase book of common phrases to use to help you through your holiday there in this foreign country. So Yvonne and her charity offered me a different way of looking at my daughter's behaviour. And I realised that actually, when I listened to what my daughter was telling me through her violence and her destruction, and through her repetitive stims that she would do where she would hurt herself, once I learned to really listen to that with new ears, then life became a billion times better.
Wow.
And we were able to understand what she was going through and understand that actually, she wasn't being destructive and violent because she was a bad person. She was in deep distress and utterly terrified. And once I learned to listen to her language, things became a billion times better, and I was able to approach her with more compassion and more patience and more understanding, and also towards myself as well. And I could understand that actually I wasn't just a bad mum. I was a mum going through an incredibly difficult time, and so that's why I wasn't able to deal with my child in the pandemic and keep on top of my work life and keep on top of the house all at the same time, because it was flipping hard.
The work that Yvonne Newbold does is phenomenal, isn't it?
Mm.
I know the love at that conference, and you think of obviously all the healthcare professionals trying to help families and the pressure and the systems and the protocols, and somehow Yvonne's just gone as a parent straight from the heart to the heart. Don't blame yourself. Aware of what that feels like and societal blame, and just stripping everything back to just humanity, really, and being kind to your child and yourself, but understanding, really deeply understanding. And then, I mean, you've used the word a billion times better. It's an incredible tribute, isn't it, to Yvonne? And people are saying that over and over and over. And she's like the most humble person I know, but we need to give that massive shout out to Yvonne Newbold and Newbold Hope, and she works so incredibly hard as well.
I honestly don't know how she does it. She's just flabbergasted. I'm just absolutely floored. And the energy and the time that she puts into even things like replying to people on Facebook comments, and she doesn't have to, but she does.
She does, yeah.
It's just incredible.
And not just a quick email,
No.
I think we've all got the same experience. And I know I've attended, because I'm a friend and because I'm interested in what she does and learning more and so on, I've attended one or two of her webinars, and she's replying at 3 a.m. to people, and she's promised to answer different questions, and she's not just answering them. Sometimes she's putting that time and effort in until it's done.
Every single time. She's nothing if not consistent.
So enough of that, because Yvonne will tell us off.
Oh, she will, yes.
We're putting her in the spotlight. That won't do. I think the other thing that really struck me from what you said, Janina, is this experience of all of us, but children during lockdown, those youngsters who are just learning about life and who've had a chance to, depending on exactly what age they are, that bit's being just stripped away. I think your daughter must have been at a particularly difficult age, do you think? I'm sure it's different for all age groups, but...
Yeah, so at the beginning of lockdown, so she was 6. Yeah, and
Year or two into school,
yeah, yeah,
friends and
absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, just starting to form strong friendship bonds, and yeah, and just all of that, everything was taken away, and we're unfortunate the fact that all of our family is flung far and wide, so we don't have parents or grandparents just up the road that we can just wander up and go and see Nanny for the afternoon. We don't have that, and so yeah, we felt particularly isolated. And then with her undiagnosed autism as well, it's yeah, that was incredibly lonely time.
So I hope now that children do get the priority and the support that they need for whatever, whether it's mental health problems or just developmental in terms of, when they say that lockdown dogs, a lot of people have obviously had dogs during lockdown, weren't able to go to any kind of training classes and weren't able to just meet other dogs in the park. So there's a very specific problem there. But what about the children, and what about where they happen to be in their development? And
Mm,
then it just came down like an axe, didn't it? Kind of cutting off all of that. And even if
absolutely.
you had the local granny and, unless you were actually in a bubble, you weren't able to see local family either.
No, no, which possibly was almost worse, I think, for those people, in that situation. At least I was able to say, well, Nanny and Granddad live 3 hours away, so we can't go and see them, sorry. Yeah, I've noticed that I run a lot of birthday parties as well. And now that we are allowed to go back and have birthday parties in village halls and things like that, I've noticed a change in children's behaviour. So they are generally a lot more raucous and a lot more rowdy, and I have to do a lot more crowd control and, okay, look, we're going to have a good time, and this is how we're going to have a good time. We're going to look after ourselves, we're going to look after each other. And I have to now make those boundaries very clear and set those expectations, because otherwise it can just get a little bit too crazy and people end up not having such a fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've never had to do that before, and that's been a marked difference that I've noticed.
Yeah. Fascinating
Yeah,
perspective. It's
yeah,
interesting that people in these different roles are noticing things like that, isn't it? Because otherwise you
yeah.
wouldn't know.
No, no, absolutely not.
So, Janina, I found that absolutely fascinating. So many different and new aspects, bringing new ideas and concepts really into the podcast series. So, I'm sure that a lot of podcast listeners will be thinking, well, who is this Janina Vigurs, and where do I contact her, and how do I find out more? And obviously, I can include a link or two in the program notes for the episode as well. What would you like to say?
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm fairly certain I'm the only Janina Vigurs in the world,
Hey,
if not in the UK. So if you want to find out more about my storytelling work, you can find me at www.janinavigurs.com. And the spelling of that, I'm sure, will be in the podcast title.
that's right.
Because it's spelt with a J and not with a Y, because I have awkward Polish spelling there. But also, I'm on Facebook really actively and Instagram as well, both at Janina Vigurs Storytelling. I don't do Twitter. I should do, but
I
I
think we
just
need you on Twitter. I
I
think
just don't have the time at the moment. My goodness, I'd never be off my phone if I was on Twitter. Goodness me.
I have been told that I come with a health warning that you don't come near Jill without ending up on Twitter, so I could make that a
Oh
personal challenge.
no. Oh goodness
Yeah.
me. Sounds kind of inevitable, doesn't it?
Well, thank you, Janina. It's been lovely talking to you. Good luck with all you're doing, and particularly the laughter specialist, because it sounds as if that's now and it's exciting and it will make a lot of difference to a lot of children, and I'm sure adults as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a complete joy talking to you, Jill. Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If so, please subscribe now to hear more of these fascinating conversations on your favourite podcast platform. And please leave a review. I tweet as Whose Shoes. Thank you for being on this journey with me, and let's hope that together we can make a difference.